Very warm welcome to you again for another session. I'm sure you've been listening for a while now, but the last session was interesting, very interesting, and at least I learned a few more things. In the meanwhile, I'll just organize little details and we'll start in less than 30 seconds. Um, Yes. So I was just gathering my thoughts because there is so much to talk about. There is so much to think about during these sessions. So it is imperative that I center myself and speak to Lydia because she's the fountainhead of a lot of ideas, and it's always a pleasure to speak to her. A very warm welcome to you, Lydia,
Thank
and
you. Thank you,
all
Trisha.
my pleasure.
My
And a very warm welcome to all of you listening to us today. To begin with, I'll introduce Lydia. Lydia is an Austrian writer of novels, essays, and columns. Her recent novel, The Judge, was highly honored by critics and audiences. She studied film and music at the University of Graz and Vienna. She has received the Bertelsmann Literature Prize in 1996, the Elias Canetti Stipendium 2007 and 2014, the Beer Prize 2017, Appreciation Award for Literature 2020, and the list goes on. I've taken the liberty of not highlighting certain names in different languages so that I don't get them wrong. But we'll put it up. I'm sure you'll be able to search her. She's all over internet, so you can really read more about her. But today, we're going to talk about your book, The Judge, which
right.
actually is already been honored by a lot of critiques and audiences, and I had the privilege of going through some of them. But before we go into the subject, the book today, I wanted to slightly talk about the current situation in the light of the recent ideological conflicts which is happening in our communities across the globe in all the countries. Have one thing in common, are marked by the questions of citizenship and images of migration. We focus on the topic of belonging today, rooted or rootless. We all belong to something, someone, or some thought. And though we live miles apart, time zones apart, we find we are all similar at the heart of it all. And today we're going to discuss it through literature, through Lydia's works, especially the book The Judge. So before we start, I don't want to talk about the book I don't want to start talking about the book and you with an abstract or an extract of the book. I would like people to explore and understand and what the book is all about. So to begin with, would you like to introduce the extract that we will be reading right now, both in
Um,
German and in English?
yes, I try. The whole novel starts with a situation which is a typical one for a professional judge. She is in her office. It is a woman judge. She is in her office and she's studying the files and prepares herself for the court and for the readings there and the hearing there. Um, so this is a common situation, nothing special, but the situation is special because it is after 2015. It was after the refugee come and the refugees that left Afghanistan and also Syria. They mingled with each other and came through the Balkan, through Greece to the Balkan to Middle Europe. And this was a pressure for the politics. So let's say it was a demanding period, and a lot of governments failed, extremely the Austrian one. And after that, everywhere, the rights for humans, the human rights, were not treated well. Even in Hungary, as you might know, even in the Balkan countries, as you know, and in Poland, as you know. So everywhere where you have this Eastern belt around Austria, it went not very well done with how to cope with the situation of refugees coming from Afghanistan and Syria and so on. And this made political pressure and ideologically pressure. And so the far right parties went to become more and more extreme, or let's say has been getting more and more to the extreme. And this is against the constitution of the Austrian nation. And the judges are always in this gap of how to estimate the situation, how to separate fact from fiction, how to separate facts from ideological interpretation, you know, because fiction is always something that tells a lot more of that one who is creating the fiction than the fiction as itself about something, you know. And in this gap of getting clear with herself, of coming to terms with the presence, the judge is occupied in preparation for the next hearing at the court, where she is expected to hear and to deal with asylum seekers, and she's doing this in a more appropriate and peculiar way than in the first level at the hierarchy system of judicial system here in Austria. And that is why she has more time and more space to do that and to make up her mind. And as she is a scholar one, she is also able to think on difficult situations in a differing way. So she can take herself apart from the facts, but also she is a human being, and there is a human factor. You cannot omit it. And this is the point where I put my finger on. So.
Yes, absolutely. I can already feel what the extract is going to be about, what the book is about. So, why don't we start reading with the book? And I will share my questions after we are done with the reading.
Okay. And I do it in German?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I'll follow it up with the English translation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Die meisten Fälle, mit denen sie in der zweiten Instanz zu tun hatte, behandelten Beschwerden, die eine andere Entscheidung in der Sache anstrebten, um Recht zu erlangen. Rechtsfrieden herzustellen ist eine juristische Angelegenheit und hat wenig mit dem natürlichen Sinn von Gerechtigkeit zu tun. In den Asylfällen zählten die nachgereichten Unterlagen viel. Sie halfen, das Bild von den negativ Bescheidenen zu verändern und Verfahrensfehler zu korrigieren. Falls die Richterin in der einen oder anderen Causa zum Entschluss käme, eine neue Hypothese der Zusammenhänge anzunehmen, würde sie dieser aufgrund der neuen Faktenlage folgen. Käme es nach ihrer Erkenntnis zu Widerspruch in den Aussagen des Antragstellers, denn in den meisten Fällen handelte es sich um einen Mann, dann könnte sie nachfragen und Aufklärung erhalten. Wer mit Gabriels Erkenntnis nicht zufrieden war, der konnte sich an das Höchstgericht wenden und vielleicht sogar an den Europäischen Gerichtshof für Menschenrechte in Straßburg. Gabrielle verkündete ihre Urteile nur mündlich, wenn sie sich der Sache sicher war. Ansonsten erließ sie schriftlich ihre Entscheidungen. Gabrielle schätzte die Abwechslung in ihrem richterlichen Alltag zwischen Asylfällen, großen Vertragsabschlüssen des Bundes und deren Anfechtungen und anderen Bereichen des Vergaberechts. Doch schon seit einiger Zeit mehrten sich die Asylfälle. Okay, shall I skip a bit? Ja, okay, so I'll skip a bit. Der rechte Stapel für die simplen, schutzwürdigen, der linke für die komplizierten Kausen von Akten war angelegt. Die Termine für die Verhandlungen setzte sie nach der Komplexität der Fälle fest. Noch war kein Bewerber dabei, den sie eindeutig der Abschiebung hätte zuführen müssen. Da geriet ihr das Attest einer posttraumatischen Belastungsstörung zwischen die Finger. Welche Beweise sie auch würdigte, fürs Bleiben entschied sie nach österreichischem Recht. Der Betroffene war männlich, weit unter 30, ohne Ausbildung, seit der Pubertät auf der Flucht. Gabrielle prüfte die Angaben der anwaltlichen Vertretung des nächsten Falles, zog wieder ein ärztliches Gutachten hervor und stellte fest, dass derselbe Arzt das Attest geschrieben hatte, wie schon vor Wochen. Sie legte das Blatt ein, schob den Akt von sich weg. Die Distanz des Gutachters, der die psychiatrische Untersuchung vorgenommen hatte, musste sie in Frage stellen. Wieso stammte das Attest in beiden Fällen vom selben Arzt? Und wieso kam es erst jetzt daher? Korrektheit machte Gabrielle nicht unmenschlich, nur emotional unberührbar für das Amt. Auch Namen sind Zeichen. Man kann sie den Menschen geben und nehmen. Man kann einen Namen an viele vergeben und gleichnamige schaffen. Wie viele Ahmads hatte sie in ihren Stapeln? Jeder Mensch ist ein Namensträger. Jeder Mensch ist einzigartig, sofern er einen Namensgeber hat. Der Name ist nicht einzigartig, beliebig teilbar und eine Zuschreibung, die Informationen zur Identifizierung enthält. Der Name überdauert die physische Materialität seines Trägers. Er bleibt als Spur vom Begriff einer Informationsmenge auf dem Grabstein stehen, sofern er in einen Grabstein gemeißelt worden ist, und wittert in romantischer Unsterblichkeit vergessen dahin. Namen kann man abziehen und hinschreiben, den Menschen dahinter erschreiben. Die Richterin mied den Sog der Vorstellungskraft. Sie war eine Verkünderin von Wirklichkeit. Unter diesem Damoklesschwert lebte sie. Fall und Zufall veränderten ihre Vorstellung von Gerechtigkeit. Die Beute dieser Jagd nach Gültigkeit ihrer Sprüche war sie selbst. Shall I continue or is it enough?
I think a little more, maybe, because
More.
it's sounding so mellifluous that, and thankfully I learned a bit of German in school, so I
Okay,
do
good.
relate to it.
Thank you very much. I will continue. Okay. Gabrielle kannte die unterschiedlichen Länderdokumentationen der verschiedenen Länder und Stellen. Sie haderte mit den widersprüchlichen Interpretationen und Empfehlungen. Die einen berichteten das Grauen und die anderen färbten Afghanistan schön und bekämpften kritische Einschätzungen als Hirngespinsterei einer Asyl-Lügenfabrik. Es gebe ihrer Meinung nach Straßenzüge in Kabul, in denen Schreiber sitzen und gegen Bezahlung Morddrohungen für die Fluchtwilligen verfertigen, um deren Asylchancen zu erhöhen. Teure Belege eines Fluchtgrundes, aber schon inflationär, weil sich praktisch jeder Fluchtwillige damit eindeckte. Diese Schreiben waren der Richterin vertraut. Ebenso vertraut waren ihr die Verharmlosungen dass Afghanistan als vielfältige Nation der Minderheiten über einen großen inneren Zusammenhalt mit regem Geschäftsleben verfüge. Es gab unter den konservativen, erzkonservativen Afghanistan-Experten Ignoranten, die die Triebkräfte des Eros zu beleben empfahlen, womit die Liebe zu den Frauen gemeint war. Gabriel kannte Fabrikbesitzer, die den unqualifiziertesten Kräften Afghanistans, den Frauen, eine Chance gaben, als Packerinnen zu arbeiten und Gemüse und Obst für die US-Stützpunkte zu liefern. Einen freiwilligen Rückkehrer hatte Gabriel noch nie erlebt. Zynische Länderdokumentationen berichteten zwar, dass eine Geschäftstätigkeit allen Afghanen und besonders den Rückkehrern offenstehe, verschwiegen aber die Aussichtslosigkeit, sich selbstständig durchzuschlagen. Die Rückkehrer waren rudimentär alphabetisiert, durch die Fluchtjahre schon von zu Hause entwöhnt und mussten ihr Stigma als Versager tragen. Wem gelang es, die Fluchterfahrung in einen Bildungsschub umzumünzen? Lesen und Schreiben allein genügt nicht, um zu überleben. Gabriel konnte aus allen Länderberichten zusammen eine Art Lebendigkeit erfahren, die einen grauenhaften Befund in den frischen Farben der Drastik und Verdrängung lieferte. Man musste immer darauf achten, aus welcher Quelle die Dokumentationen stammten. Es gab Gutachter, die eingestanden, auf die Barrikaden zu gehen, würde die eigene Tochter einen afghanischen Freund zu ehelichen beabsichtigen, ja sogar zur Gewalt zu greifen, würde sie mit ihm auch nur für einige Monate in den Süden des Landes gehen, um aus Liebe in einem Lehmbau ihre Entmündigung zu erfahren. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. The language is so lyrical that and so beautifully rhythmic that it was quite interesting for me to hear how you were your intonations, and I've tried to do justice to the English translation.
Yeah, please go ahead.
The Judge by translated by Geoffrey Hoyles. Most of the cases she handled on appeal dealt with complaints aiming for a new decision so that justice would be done. Producing peace under the law is a juridical matter and has little to do with the natural sense of justice. In asylum cases, the documents submitted after the first decision counted for a lot. They helped to alter the impression made by the negative outcomes and to correct procedural errors. If she, the judge, decided in one case or another to accept a new hypothesis around the circumstances, she would pursue this on the basis of a new state of facts. If there was, to her knowledge, a contradiction in the applicant's statements, then she could ask him, in most cases it was a man, for further clarification. Anyone not satisfied with Gabriel's findings could turn to the Supreme Court and perhaps even to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Gabrielle rendered her judgments orally only when she was sure of her case. Otherwise, she issued her decisions only in writing. Gabrielle appreciated the change of pace in her daily judicial routine between asylum cases, major federal treaties and challenges to them, and other areas of government procurement law. But for some time now, the number of asylum cases has been on the rise. She leafed through the appellate's documents and studied them. After perusing the files, she put the cases aside, either to her left or her right. The right-hand pile was for the simple cases that merited protection, and the left-hand pile was for the complicated cases. She scheduled the dates for the hearings according to the complexity of the cases. So far, there was not an applicant among them she would clearly need to send to be deported. Now she picked up a medical certificate of post traumatic stress disorder. No matter what evidence she acknowledged, when she decided in favor of staying it was strictly according to the Austrian law. She compared the case number with the certificate. It had been filed after the original application had not yet been considered. She looked through the appellate's papers and made a check mark where the court of first instance had cited the country documentation. Then she put the file down to her left. The subject was male, well under 30, uneducated, a refugee since puberty. Gabriel looked over the statements of counsel for the next case, pulled out another medical opinion, and realized that the same doctor had written both the certificates. She put the sheet back and pushed the file away. She had to question the impartiality of the expert witness who had performed the psychiatric examination. Why was it that the certificate came from the same doctor in both cases? And why had it only turned up now? Being meticulous didn't make Gabrielle inhuman, just emotionally untouchable in her official position. Her eyes teared up. The judge was glad she had the office to herself. I'll skip a little bit and then come to names are a sign. You can give a name to a person and then take it away. You can assign one name to many individuals and create identically named people. God knows how many Ahmeds did she have in her piles. Every person bearing that one name is unique. It is a marker that contains information for identification. When the bearer of the name dies, his story still survives through the news, reports, letters, and or even the gravestone. The name outlives the body. The name remains on the gravestone as a trace of the person that ever was. His stories are not all lost. It takes a while for the chiseled name to wither away forever. Gabriel knew that one can strip away a name and write it down and can construct the person behind it in writing. The judge avoided the undertow of imagination. She was a herald of reality. She lived beneath the sword of Damocles. Incidents and coincidences altered her idea of justice. She herself was the query in this hunt for the validity of her rulings. I'll skip a bit more and I'll come to this part where Gabriel always looked attentively through these brochures. The country reports were used for supporting arguments as long as they were backed up with facts and figures. On that score, Afghanistan was achieving record numbers of innocent dead. There were neither jobs nor training positions, nor the economy that would provide them. Even the Afghan Minister for Refugee Affairs asked the Republic of Austria not to send back volunteer returnees among the asylum applicants because back home they didn't know what to do with them. It would be better to train them in Central Europe and then help them out with a little financial support for developing a basic economic framework. Gabriel was familiar with the different country documentations from the various agencies. She wrangled with the contradictory interpretations and recommendations. Some reported horrors, and the others painted Afghanistan in bright colors, contesting critical assessments as hallucinatory fantasies from a factory that issued lies about asylum. According to them, there were streets in Kabul where scribes sat and got paid for coming up with murder threats for people wanting to escape to increase their chances of getting asylum. Expensive proofs of reason to flee, but inflationary because practically every refugee made sure to have one. The judge was familiar with these documents. She was just as familiar with the ones that downplayed the situation. saying that as a diverse nation of minorities, Afghanistan enjoyed strong inner cohesion and a brisk business scene. Among the conservative and the arch conservative Afghanistan experts, there were ignoramuses who recommended animating the driving force of Eros. Gabriel knew of factory owners who gave opportunities to Afghanistan's least qualified workforce, the women, to work as packers and to supply fruits and vegetables to the US bases. Gabriel had never yet encountered a voluntary returnee. Cynical country documentations reported that there was a role in the economy open to every Afghan, especially returnees. But they were silent about the absence of prospects for making it on your own. The returnees had only the rudiments of literacy. The refugee years had estranged them from their homes, and they were forced to bear the stigma of failure. Who could succeed in converting the refugee experience into the drive to get an education? Reading and writing alone were not enough to survive on. In the next report from an eyewitness who traveled to Kabul on business, there was a claim that the Taliban were not as bad as the criminal gangs in cahoots with them. Many experts were convinced that three-quarters of the refugees were economic refugees and that the wish to escape poverty was simply not grounds for asylum. The only thing that all of the country documentations agreed on was the finding that the level of education was abysmal and that this could not easily be changed. For whom Gabriel supposed to produce peace under the law? Certainly, if the refugee in this country were to be educated and trained, that would set something in motion. But instead, apprentices had been torn from training programs and deported. Politics manipulated judicial thinking, and hence, the more euphemistically the condition in Afghanistan were portrayed, the more Gabriel wavered. The bias of the experts and the dubiousness of the information the court cited to justify its rulings could be exposed only if journalists investigated. Then the alleged objective premises, the basis of the country reports, would collapse like the tissue of lies they were. Plaintiffs who got caught up in the gears of this manipulative justice would suffer extraordinary injustice. From all the country reports taken together, Gabriel was able to gather a sort of liveliness that delivered gruesome evidence in the fresh colors of melodrama and suppressed information. You always had to keep the source of the documentation in mind. There were assessors who admitted they would go to the barricades if their own daughters intended to marry an Afghan boyfriend, and even resort to violence if, out of love, she went with him to the south of the country just for a few months to experience the loss of her autonomy in a mud hut. With
Thank
this,
you.
thank you. It was a beautiful piece, and I thought it was imperative given the situation right now. It is something that a lot, in India also, we face that a lot of Afghans are coming in, and hence this was an eye opener for a lot of us.
Yeah.
But let me come to the questions now. You've
Yeah.
named a woman judge as the protagonist of the novel. I was wondering what special perspective you were planning to gain by doing so. And if you permit me to ask further, does the worldview of a male judge and a female judge differ?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Well, I guess it differs. It differs from person to person. And women, men, these are umbrella terms for me. So she's an individual at herself, but she is under the umbrella of so-called what is a woman, womanhood, whatever this is. Yeah, and that is the question as well. And I wanted in my first draft of the novel, I could detect my my own trap. I invented a judge as a man judge, as a male judge. And while writing the story, I went very often to the court, and I did research there, and I talked to a lot of judges as well. I also talked to NGO participants and to asylum applicants. And so it is really a long research before being able to write such a book. And all of a sudden, I detected that there are also a lot of women judges around. And why do I shape a male figure for that? But the manuscript, the first draft, was almost written to the end. And before finishing, I decided to make a game with myself. I turned the male judge into a female one, and I looked what makes this, what is this changing with the whole structure and everything. And for me, it was clear that this construction of a person with profession, with education, with history, with origin, and with a perception of a certain perception of the word image, it is a construction. Yeah. And when it is a construction, you can change that one who is making this construction, because this is just fictional, you know. And all of a sudden, I decided I will do this. I will change the male into a female person. And even in the so-called private life, I just had to put some changes, because the thinking of this invented person, it is nothing else than mine, you know, because it's me who is creating these fantasies. And all my stereotypes and all the criticized stereotypes I want to depict, you know, because I want to be socially critically, of course, and politically awakening, and so on, what you can imagine. And this was, for me, it was a really cool experience to see how true this is, that even the stereotypes I want to criticize are my stereotypes as well. And so it was kind of I was trapped by myself, but I realized it and I used it fruitfully, as I hope.
Absolutely, it comes through. While I was reading it, I just saw it happening. That's what the next question actually was it autobiographical? Had it all autobiographical elements? And you've already answered that. But tell me something. In light of a life-threatening situation, like later in the book, Gabrielle was a target of a violent Yahidi family. She also receives threat from someone who was denied asylum by her. Do you think a male protagonist, a male version, would have dealt the situation any differently?
Might be. The fact that I made a woman of her made it made my invention to identify with women's fear, and with also with that what I can understand under this term. But in fact, it is a fact in Austria. We had the last years. It was strident that female journalists and female professionals who stand for something like an institution were threatened by a lot of extremists who wanted them to intimidate them, to weaken them, and to reduce them to their physical body, to make their complex expertism unworthful, you know. They wanted to minimize everything what they say. And if you put pressure on somebody by threatening through social media cases, then you feel endangered. And this happened to a lot of female journalists and criticizing the political affairs in Austria and revealing what is going on through the aligned media that is connected to the governmental rulers. And so this is why I think it is necessary to know that investigation by journalism is totally necessary and has not to be discussed. It is a column of any democracy you can imagine, and that is why they are threatenable. These and it was not interesting. It was sad that this female the intimidation against women is of a high extent here in Austria, and this is it is a social matter, and it is discussed, of course, but what to do against such movements is it's we are still working on it, because it's really a problem.
It's a problem that is I think everywhere. We see that problem everywhere. Somehow we think that women are can be easily suppressed, and there are a lot of articles. I read one article on the New Yorker about it as well. So I think there is this image that the resilience of women has been underestimated, and in your book it has not done that. So
No.
I salute you for that. And but when we're talking about women's fear, what one term which struck is very striking is women writers or female writers.
Okay.
Because while I was growing up, I was influenced by two very powerful Bengali women writers, Mahashweta Devi and Navanita Dev Sen. Now, while Mahashweta Devi was not in favor of the tag of women writers, Navanita Dev Sen founded a women's writers association called SHOI, which means a female companion or a female friend. And so, do you think that compartmentalizing writers on the basis of gender is a good idea?
Well, I think it depends. Let's say, if I got you right, while inventing a story, shaping a story, and this is an example, I stressed it yesterday, and I want to shape a racist Austrian in a coffee house, or any racist from anywhere. How can I depict this one? It depends if I go into direct speech, and in direct speech there is no biased free language. So I think it depends. Everything depends on the content you want to express, and to find the correct language for that. And I guess in fictional writing, it is up to the author's voice and to the author's writing what that one is using, and is responsible for it. But this is authorized language, authorized speech, and I guess the responsibility has always to be taken by that one. And if it is question of discussion, Good. Then come on stage and let's discuss. And I think there are different sorts of texts. It's not only there is not only a novel you write. When you write an essay, you change your mind in everything. So the words got different meanings, and when it comes to become precise and you have to express most precisely as you can what you want to express, then it is clear that a mostly biased free language has to be approached, because you write for, and who is that one? And that brings me back to the question of what is respect. And when and respect is not, it's not going up and it is not going down. It is an equalized, it is an equal level where we are talking with each other. And my texts is nothing else than an archive of thoughts that came from me, but the understanding and the revitalizing of these dead letters is that what the mind of the receiver is doing. And so we are influencing each other all the time. And yeah, let's say for me it is interesting to think about bias in language and biased free language, because it makes aware how I am, as I told it in the beginning of our discussion, about my own fixed ideas, and it makes me questionable for me through myself. And honestly said, this is widening my horizon of comprehension. And as I think this is that what makes me curious to share with others as well.
I think your internet is breaking, so there are places where I couldn't really properly comprehend, but I understood what you're saying. But I
Okay.
also want to speak to you about what happened a couple of weeks back. I think earlier this week, it was revealed that Carmen Mola, the author of several widely praised Spanish crime thrillers and the recipient of the world's most expensive literary prize, was actually a fictionalized nom de plume of three men. Do you think it is a fair practice? I would believe that when the real identities of the writer was discovered, the organizers should have withdrawn the prize because it was meant for women. So, what are your views on this?
I did a little bit of research on this awkward Premio Planeta de Novela. And there is a Wikipedia page, and on it is explained who has already got this award, and what is the criticism about. And so this is interesting, this prize, I must say, because it is funded by big publisher houses, so big companies, and they all have marketing interests, nothing else. They are not looking on the, let's say, quality of a novel. They look for the content. Can we make something nice for our how do you say, common success, not common, commercial success, or what can we make out of it to our benefit? And this makes it awkward, you see. And also that I have never read such a thriller, or very violent and bloody thriller, splatter thriller by the so-called Carmen Mola. But it was said that this author is a woman, around 50, and a professor, a scholar woman with 3 children. So she fulfills the imagination of the good mother, of the brilliant lady with high level eyebrow intelligence, you know. And on the other side, she's completely creepy, and she can be a lustful, violenting, appreciating, awful monster. So she combines everything, and this combination is successful to sell as the image of an author, female woman author. This is a difference if it is a man author or a woman author, you know. They used it, and I think that the 3 men, they knew about this because they are screenplay writers for TV series. They know what is commercially appropriate, most appropriate. So they formed this, and they were successful with this and did that. I have never checked a novel by Carmen Mola, but and now we know that we were deceived, and I am totally disappointed, and I'm really angry about this. And I didn't know that this award for this Premio Planeta Novela is only dedicated for women writer. I haven't known that, and in this case, it is betrayal.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
actually, we have examples of a lot of people, not at this scale, but a lot of writers actually taking up women nom de plumes to write. For example, Yasmina Khadra is a name. In India,
yeah, I know.
we have had many such examples. Even Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay wrote a few books under the pen name of a lady. And
Yeah.
so this is a phenomena that we are aware of, and this is happening. But
Yeah.
let's come back to the situation of Afghanistan. And so we know that Austria has more than 40,000 refugees. That's the second biggest in number in the Europe after Germany. But you dealt with the concept of asylum, displacement, and migration quite qualitatively through the perspective, through different report cases that are being in the court, through Masuma and through the brother Karl, I think Karl, and who also was stationed in the Red Cross in Kabul. What do you think happens to the sense of belonging in this relatively fluid world, which is turning more fluid each day, aided by transnational flow of capital, human resources, information, and ideas?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Um, well, hmm, yeah, it is a question. Where do I belong to? To
Yeah.
which group do I belong to? Who decides this? And I think this is the main question. Who has the right to decide this? And even if you are part of a group, it it is not said that this is a nice feeling, and you can feel yourself marginalized, and scapegoated. Um, you can feel yourself like a sacrificial victim to create for others a group. So it is there are belongings. They are That is a question of legal terms, citizenship, passport, and so on. Maybe religious as well. So am I this or that, believing in God or not, and whatever, in several gods, or in Buddhism, whatever it is. But this is something that is physically bounding you, huh? And gives you the possibility to live with your feet on earth. And the other is, so let's say, the realm of spirituality. Um, but the individual in its in its task for developing its individuality, where does it belong and who has the right to decide this? And I think this makes it fluid. These questions make it fluid, and you can practice and challenge yourself, can practicing this to accept this conditional fluidity.
Yeah.
It is the fact.
Yeah.
It's, you have to accept, not to tolerate, to accept. And that is what I think, to cope with is hard, because we all want to have security, want to feel safe, and want to know we can cope with everything, which is illness, which is strange to us. But, well, not easy, but it is a training, and translating and reading literature is a way to come to a better word for oneself, maybe, because it makes your thinking on everything more open. Open is such a stereotype word, but this term, I hate it, but it is durchlässig. It's, you are permeable.
Yeah.
Ideas can permeate through you, and this is not a danger. It is the satisfying of curiosity.
Yeah. So on that note, satisfying of curiosity, I'm going to merge two questions because they're important. You also addressed transvestism, the noun transvestite, the verb transvestize, the adjective transvestile, and the adverb transvestily. Now, these words were actually absent from our vocabulary for a really long time. But today there is an increased visibility and acceptance of even transgender people and transvestites. For example, we see it in the success of the Danish Girl movie. But still, a lot of people, a lot of men are secretly carrying out transvestism. So now I don't want to talk about belonging when it comes to this, but I also talk about what was the social reaction that you have portrayed in this book. For example, what is the turmoil in the wife's mind? You also addressed. In your novel The Judge and your novel The Sister of Fears, characters with OCD and the character who suffers from PTSD and mental dissociation disorder psychosis. How do you look at this social stigma connected with this mental problem, and as well as transvestism, compelling people to keep it under the carpet?
If I got you right, to slip into the role of something means that you yourself are in a like an inherited construction of confining your awareness of body, of corpus, and I don't really. It is of course it is a crime to say that this is kind of an illness, or it is kind of a distorted mind or something like this. Much more, it is giving a picture of order. It is of an order you are not used to, maybe, or you get used to it, and then another one is changing this rhythm of constructing our definition of what is this and what is that, and this binarity in all our in our not it's not origin, no, in our habits. It is ingrained, let's say. This to cross is, I think this has a really strong power to make our belief shatter. And this is what I like, because it is, as I said, it is opening your eyes for a different view of world, and this is important. Otherwise, you get stuck in yourself, and this is like living in prison. Maybe it is you are in total security, but also in security for any development, and this cannot be satisfying, I guess. And even when you look just to the little Roman Catholic mythology, you can find examples for this crossing of binarity. And last weekend, I was on the countryside in a little village where I gave lectures on creative writing. And the people from there told me there is a little statue in the museum of this village, and this is called Die Heilige Kümmernis. And it is called, in English, I did research on it, it is called Saint Wilgefortis, which means strong virgin, saint, strong virgin. And it is the story behind this little statue, which is like this. It shows a female shape with a dress and scarf and everything, and it is a woman, but this woman is wearing a beard. And the story behind this is that this virgin should marry a pagan king. Yeah. And she didn't want this. So she prayed to God to do something with her, that she's not pretty enough for the other one. And overnight, she got hair in her face, and she transformed into another. So like Michel Foucault, he wrote he wrote a biography on hermaphroditism. And it reminded me, the story of the little statue reminded me of this, of a story about hermaphroditism and how it was Christianized and put into this context. This was this awful story with praying to God and He will transform you and so on, and that was the sign, the symbol for that's real Christianity, sacrifice yourself and so on. And this always triggers me, because I think there are so many different concepts of how a human being has to be, and this confinement through gender and sexes is just an example for these borders where you are caught in. And we have this, I think, in all cultures. Yeah. And this is interesting. And to relieve that knowledge is what should be done. So I agree for everybody who is able to cross these boundaries. Mm.
You are absolutely right, and that's a very interesting story. But we will have to close the session now. But before we do that, a little bit about the book, The Judge, which I've had the privilege of reading. The book actually it doesn't just break. It's not just a strong woman's voice, but it also breaks all the stigmas around gender fluidity and mental health issues, and there's so many other things which are an asylum, the identity crisis which comes due to forced migration or forced movement out of the displacement. And so the themes that um, she has written about resonates with me sitting here in India as well. These are universal concerns, and yet they are very rooted in her language, in the region that she's written in. It's a very interesting read, and I didn't. I actually read the entire thing in perhaps less than 2 nights, and I really wish all of you read this book, and then perhaps we'll have another session on this on
Yeah, it would be
belonging.
great. Thanks you so much, Trisha, for the correction and for this wonderful translation of the part where I played with the meaning of name and names, because you really got it, and I was very happy about your translation.
I'm
Thank you.
glad. But of course, I could do better. Perhaps we'll sit again with it a little later and
Okay.
we'll work on it again. But it
Mhm.
was a beautiful part, and your explanation was really quite vivid. So I could do whatever I
Mhm.
could did.
Fine.
That thing. I hope all of you enjoyed the session. We have another session right now again. And Yoshita, would you like to?
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Trisha,
Thank
for
you.
the conversation. And thank you, Austrian Cultural Forum, Embassy of Austria, for bringing Lydia on board for the festival.